Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Paranormal Rangers podcast show. How are you today, John?
I'm doing great. I understand that Stan is up to his neck in plumbing work and
Mm-hmm.
he won't be able to get on here. So,
We're going to use him once again for
yeah,
having to take care of things in his home front. So we
yep, taking
appreciate.
care of the flooding.
He had a pipe burst. I understand. Well, today to the audience, we have a special guest. We have another exclusive, and her name is Melissa Madrigal. For the first time in her recent findings of aerial UAP analysis, she has come up with a document through her expertise and dedication to uncovering the truth. She located a frequency while researching a fascinating phenomena of a UAP that was experienced by someone who will also be on the show to give us her account of the sighting that she had in the photos that she submitted to Melissa's work. Today, we are going to learn about the groundbreaking work and the potential implication of understanding UAPs. In the document that was completed and authored by Melissa, she is the Director of Research for the International UFO Bureau and founder of Maddie Sphere Research. She uses all her analytical processes, including frequency mapping, motion modeling, and cross-case comparisons, were conducted independently using proprietary tools and methodologies. Now, I said a whole lot of stuff there, but Melissa's going to break it down for us today. So today, I'd like to introduce Melissa Madrigal. Hi, Melissa. Welcome to the Paranormal Rangers podcast show. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. So I'll just, I guess, go right into it.
Yeah, I kind of gave her a brief understanding of who you are and who you worked for.
Yeah, and just we do have another guest, and let's bring her on too, because she is. This is Mindy Topfest, and Mindy is the CEO of the International UFO Bureau and a good friend of ours. And I know she's got some burning questions that are going to come out in this segment too. So, Melissa, it's all yours. Go.
Okay. So a little bit of background here. Just like a lot of people watching this, I grew up in a world full of half truths and covered stories and distraction. And I watched reality get buried under bad explanations. I come from systems and signal analysis background, not military, not academia. I built my process outside of traditional gatekeeping, and that's probably why I caught this. I come from systems thinking, frequency analysis, and background that's rooted in asking not just what we're seeing, but how it works. There's been so much noise, blurred and footage, and withheld data, and dead end stories. And I've spent years trying to cut through that. And that is what I came here to share today. It's finally no longer speculation. It's data that I've been chasing for years. A 5.04 hertz signal, stable, repeating, strategically precise, dedicated, detected in two separate UFO cases. Different witnesses, different coastlines, same exact frequency, down to the decimal. That does not happen by chance. That's a footprint of a system, one that's operating on rules that we haven't been told about. But it doesn't stop there. Underneath the primary signal, I found a full harmonic ladder. It's a frequency stepping down in in a mathematically perfect pattern. We have a
Melissa, your sound is breaking up. It might be that your mic is covered if you're wearing a lapel mic, or it might be that you're too far away from the speaker.
Okay, I'll come closer. So the subharmonics that I found was 0.19 hertz, 0.29 hertz, 0.59 hertz, 1.29 hertz, 2.49 hertz, and 4.99 hertz. That's not nature. That's engineering, the kind you see in plasma field regulation and signal regulation and advanced propulsion control. And here's sort of the turning point. The data has now been peer reviewed by Dr. Rogers. He's um, a former U.S. Air Force major and NASA's chief of aerospace medicine, as well as Lieutenant Colonel Thomas de la Garza at NATO level. He's a NATO level analysis. These are high professionals with high clearance, and they have confirmed that what we've documented here is extraordinary. Whether the tech is ours or not, the fact is that it's real, it's repeatable, and it's been buried for decades until now. There have and will be some concerns coming out. I've been seeing some of the comments that there's always a risk in revealing what was meant to never be found. But the bigger risk, I think, is staying silent. What I'm showing isn't a fantasy. It's measurable, it's repeatable, and we found proof that in Hayden Hughes files archives, and is in the archives that we're going through that will be released to the public. There's documents showing that the Air Force intentionally suppressed the data back in the 60s. So is it risky? Yes, because it challenges control, but this isn't about threat. It's about public truth, and the public deserves access to what's real, especially when it's been hidden in plain sight for decades. I didn't just stumble into this. I built systems to find it, and now that I'm here, I'm not going to back off, because this data doesn't belong behind closed doors anymore. So whether it's advanced human tech or something entirely different, we're now watching the behavior of a system. And once we can measure the system, we can start understanding it, tracking it, responding to it. And that changes absolutely everything. I know that some people are going to ask, why does 5.04 hertz matter? Because it's not just a frequency, it's a fingerprint. It showed up twice, exactly the same, in two separate UFO cases. That's not a glitch. That's a running system. That's a system running under control. When I broke it,
Melissa, your sound keeps fading out and disappearing, and then it comes up back really loud. So obviously somebody in the government doesn't want us to have you talking.
I'll come closer. I know when I come closer, my face turns white, but that's okay. So let me go back to where was I thinking? The subharmonics. When I broke down the subharmonic ladder, it was clean and evenly spaced and mathematically nested. You don't get that from wind or wildlife or anything random. That's architecture, that's intention. This kind of structure you see in advanced systems, like I said before, where energy needs to be stabilized in real time. Plasma fields, feedback, regulation, propulsion, technologies that don't need wings or combustion or rotors to move. And the object, it didn't just light up the sky, it physically interacted with the environment. We're talking about heat signatures, reflected geometry on the ocean, and a field perimeter that behaves like a controlled plasma diffusion. So why does this matter? Well, because this signal is measurable, right? And repeatable, like I said before. It's not buried in some classified lab. It's in the wild now. And if we can track it, we can study it. If it's ours, someone skipped about 40 years of aerospace disclosure. If it's not, then we're watching something operate here now on a frequency that we've never been told exists. So the question at this point now is not if it's real, it's who built the system that runs on a 5.04 hertz frequency. One of the interesting aspects of this is that the reflected geometry on the water is symmetrical light seen in both the Daytona and Mindy's case. There's nothing standard that projects that 5.04 hertz. It isn't a common frequency for communication or aviation or radar or navigation systems. You will not find it in commercial drones or satellites or any known aircraft systems. It is too low a frequency. It's too low for radios. It's too high for tectonics or natural infrasound, and it's way too precise to be background noise. But here's the thing. It's right in the zone used in experimental field systems. Some lab-grade plasma drives and EM propulsion concepts pulse in low frequencies during stabilization. So when I saw the exact 5.04 hertz showing up in 2 unrelated UAP cases, I knew that it wasn't random and it wasn't interference. It was control. And whatever system is producing it, it's not something that we know that exists. And it is rare, but it does show up in some very interesting places. Theta brainwave transition zone. A 504 hertz sits in a high theta range, 4 to 8 hertz. This is borderline between unconscious and the conscious states linked to deep intuition and perception and psychic access, which I think is just amazing. A lot of questions. Could it be a drone? That was one of the first things I ruled out very early. There's no structure. There's no wings. There's no rotors. There's no blinking lights. Nothing matches FFA or military standards. And movement hovers silently. It completely silent. And then shifts position without any visible thrust or tilt. Drones, military, commercial, they can't do that without producing sound, heat, or directional compensation. And that doesn't show any of it. I've also checked for known RFs and command signals in the environment. Nothing matched. No GHz bands, commercial emissions, no radar returns, no tracking beacons. This isn't following known aviation behaviors. It's moving in a way that doesn't line up with man-made flight systems. Even stealth drones require stabilization systems, heat sinks, EM signatures. So if this is black tech, well, it would leave traces. And they left none. Lights and there's no, just light signatures, structure, and an energy pulse that matches nothing in the current airspace playbook. If it's military, like I said before, we haven't been told about decades of work. As far as it being alien tech, I'm not going to claim who made it. What I'm saying is this doesn't behave like anything else in public aerospace. It doesn't have wings. It doesn't have engines. There's no noise. There's no strobing. The structure underneath the light is there. We see thermal signatures. We see plasma light containment. We even see real world reflections on the ocean. Like I said before, it's confirming its physical presence. So if it's ours, that would be absolutely very interesting. One of the things I really want to bring up is that the FOIA released reports and pilot testimonies that describe pulsing or strobe-like UAPs, especially in the 4 to 7 hertz range. That includes like the Nimitz encounter, where objects exhibit rhythmic light emissions and energy field behavior. So the idea of a low frequency pulse emission isn't new, but 504 hertz, 5.04 hertz specifically, down to the decimal, no. As far as I can tell, this is the first time that exact frequency and its full harmonic structure has been documented and released publicly. It may be behind closed doors, but it hasn't been acknowledged. This might be the first time it's ever been confirmed in civilian hands. And now, thanks to Hayden C. Hughes, his archive, which we are currently being processed for the public release, that this kind of filtering was not accidental. In 1966, the Air Force funded a university-led study not to investigate UFOs, but to manage public perception. It was designed to downplay the phenomena and keep the public in doubt. That's not theory, it's in the documents.
You're speaking of the Condon report.
Yes, so we even found that in the internal list tracking the Condon Committee's members and affiliations kept by IUFOB decades ago. It shows that
Can we have you hold up just for a second? Mindy, can you tell us about your sighting? And in the meantime, Melissa, can we have you switch to your computer microphone instead of the deal? Your voice is dropping out, and then it comes back on, and then it drops out. And I don't think it's a matter of how close you are.
How about now?
Perfect. That works a lot better.
Okay, that works a lot better.
Okay.
Okay,
Are we
John,
going
do
to?
you want me to pick up and speak about how we came across this information?
Yeah, if you would just real quickly kind of give us some context to what she's talking about.
I know Melissa is one of these that her brain is much bigger than mine, probably, and she speaks in big words. And I don't, I understand them, but it takes me a while to break them all down.
I'm holding my dictionary under the picture here.
Exactly. So, with the International UFO Bureau, which you and Michelle are both a part of, Michelle being on the board of directors and John, you leading as the director of Indigenous Voices, you're well aware of the team that we built up here just in the last 6 months. And while we were in that building phase, at the very beginning, this was back in November. I had left another organization, and in December, we were scheduled to go on a nice cruise over Christmas vacation for me and my husband and our 2 children, because my son is going to be graduating, or he just graduated and he's going off to college. So we wanted to have a nice vacation for us. And I filed all the paperwork to get the Bureau back up and running, because it was originally founded in 57. And so I just had to file the paperwork to reinstate it with the Secretary of State. I was getting that going, and then left on our cruise. And I was ready to just take a break from UFOs and enjoy my time with my family. So I wanted to address this up front, because if I was an outsider looking in and hearing this story, I would be very suspicious, because I'm basically saying what we're saying is, look, here's a girl that founded a UFO organization. Oh, and by the way, here's this major finding from a UFO video she filmed. That's, that's quite a coincidence. So up until then, I did not consider myself an experiencer in the sense of being an abductee. I've seen lights in the sky that I couldn't pin down. I would go in and check the flight radars and the satellites and everything, and like, okay, well, that was strange. Can't line it up with anything. It's probably an unknown. But that didn't happen very often for me. That's, a handful of times in my lifetime. So leading up to that cruise, I was not expecting to see any unexplained lights. So it was December 23rd, this last year, 2024, and we had a room with a balcony on it. And my husband and son were extremely tired. They had laid down, and my daughter was up, I think, looking at her phone in our cabin. And I just went out to enjoy the evening on the balcony. And while I was out there, she came out at one point, my daughter did, and we actually saw like an amber colored light off in the distance. And it started off as like a star-like light. I mean, it was just a little pinpoint in the sky, and it grew in intensity like it was coming towards us. And I was like, well, that's not a star, because it got rather large. It wasn't huge in our view, but it was much larger than it had started. So we watched it, and it disappeared. As I was trying to take a picture of it, I was trying to zoom in, and by the time I got there, it was gone. So I said, okay, well, that's strange. We went back inside, and about 10, 15 minutes later, I got back out onto the balcony again. And that's when I noticed this light off in the distance, right above the ocean level. It was dark outside, about 11 o'clock at night. And I saw it, and it flared up and really started like flashing. And I said, well, that's strange. So I started recording, and you'll hear in the first video, I yell for my daughter. I say, Aneshka, come out here, look at this thing. I don't know what it is. And you'll hear us speaking in the video, trying to determine what it is we're looking at. So I'm like, could that be a buoy or an oil rig or something of that nature? Because I'm from Oklahoma. We're landlocked. I'm not familiar with a lot of the things that might be seen out on the open water. So I was leaving it open for whatever it could be. And so you hear us kind of walking through that, trying to determine what we're looking at. And then the second video is where it really starts flaring up and flashing a lot at us. So that happened. I that next morning mentioned to my husband, oh, we saw, some unexplained light out there. And that was the end of it. I did go inside the cabin and took a picture of the TV screen, because on Carnival cruises, they'll list your exact location, the temperature, the heading, all of that information, the speed. And I thought, well, if this is an unexplained, we can at least look back into it and see the location and information surrounding it. And then I forgot about it for a couple of months because we started forming the Bureau. My full attention was on it. And so whenever I came across Melissa, I had seen her on TikTok, and she had posted something about the genetic condition that I have and which she has, and had drawn some conclusions between it and some of our heightened sensibility or senses that we have with this condition. And I said, my goodness, you're one of the only people I've heard speak about this, and I have some theories. I'd love to talk to you. And so she ended up quickly joining the Bureau and gave us a chance, and I'm so thankful for it. But in the meantime, she said, what can I be doing? Because we still hadn't launched our reporting mechanism. We didn't have any protocols in place. We were literally at the very beginning stages of building. And I said, well, if you want to play around with it, I have a video from the cruise I just took a couple months ago. I haven't had a chance to look at it and confirm anything. It more than likely is something related to, nautical aviation or something. And yeah, you see what you can find. And so that's what she did.
Mindy, what I really find interesting about your story and her finding Melissa is kind of a collaboration of having two commonalities. What I find really interesting about this whole story is her findings. When the military hides these type of programs that are the analysis of what's going on with different projects that are military based, they don't want it out to the common people, because what happens in that is it becomes homeland security issues, and we have to protect the homeland security. Well, basically, what's come out with Dr. Rogers recently, basically him witnessing a UFO that was being constructed by the U.S. Air Force. I found her findings very interesting. There was an actual movie made in 2018 with Gillian Anderson called UFO, where a kid witnessed a UFO over I think it was Chicago O'Hare Airport that stood there, and he ended up finding a frequency attached to that. And with his brilliant analytical mathematical skills, he figured out that the analytics were what brought and started communicating with this alien species. And this is fascinating to me, Melissa, because you're on to something. You are on to something. Was this a communication response to Mindy's story of her going out and she never does this, and all of a sudden she just had this frequency feeling inside her called an emotion to wanting to see the beauty of the sky? I often wonder if we're sometimes nudged that way because we're being sent impulses of light and frequency and energy to go see something occur. This happened to me recently when I was in California. I heard something say, look up in the sky. Well, Starlink rocket was flying over and I caught pictures of it. At first it looked like a comet, but then I looked at what's happening in our sky tonight. It was a Starlink rocket. So some of these things, I think energetically, the pulses are coming through and we're communicating with him. And if we're tuned in just right, there may be a communication process through frequency going on. I'd like for Melissa to comment on that.
Possibility.
Yeah, I was going to say that, Mindy, it sounds like you may have been a past investigator for an organization who shall not be named. Just like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
But Melissa, go ahead now. Now that we got good audio on you, we want to hear more because you got some.
We can hear you now.
Stuff.
Thank you.
Since we're right now on the topic of whether it's communicating, I will bring up that in my current case that I'm analyzing, which is still this case, I'm going deeper into it. It's not public yet. the pattern is shifting. The intervals between pulses aren't fixed, they're stretched. They compress, and when they're mapped out, you start seeing something a little bit unusual. The timing itself may be encoding information. I'm not going to go too far into it yet, but the timing changes align with what we would expect from a low frequency modulation, like a system built not just to move, but to respond. It's early stage data, but it's clear that this isn't just a propulsion signature anymore. It's doing something. So as far as the communication goes, I mean, there's a good possibility. If I go back to where I was before, I was talking about the Condon committee members, and kept by IUFB decades ago. It shows just how closely this was watched and how aware they were that the project was more than optics. What more about optics than discovery? And then in 1968, a letter from Edward Condon himself, the head of the study, he admits the project was already collecting civilian reports and reviewing live sightings, but he also says that they hadn't yet decided what the final publication would take, and that shows they were already managing the narrative before the study was even concluded. One document even states directly that the Air Force has used ridicule and deception to keep the public in the dark about one of the most important problems in our time. And when the final report came out in 1969, multiple scientists who worked on it, like David Saunders, spoke out, and he was fired for saying that some of these crafts had to be under intelligent control. Newspapers printed the backlash, which we have in the archives, but the story still got buried, and the messaging didn't stop with the report. Headlines told the public the story was over. UFO tales, they were myths, was study concluded. Teachers were even advised to stop giving their students credit for reading about UFOs. That it wasn't science, that it was narrative control. So we're left with two options right now. Either this is a new class of black tech operating in total secrecy, or it's something entirely differently that we don't understand. I do believe right now with the data we have that it could be plasma based because of how the light behaves. It's not flickering like an LED, and it's not focused like a beam. It diffuses outward in a soft halo, stable, even, and without any strobe or pattern. That's what plasma does when it's suspended or continued. There's no visible housing, there's no directional source, just a glowing field. And that matches what we've seen in known UAP footage, like the gimbal case, and in plasma-based propulsions. The consistency, the color, the tone, the glow pattern all point to energy being held and modulated, not projected from a bulb or a device. And the green to white spectrum, combined with the lack of red or infrared bleed, is consistent with ionized gas behavior in field containment. It's not atmospheric. It's not reflected. It's active and it's controlled. Let's see.
So you were talking about the emissions of the brightness and motion synchronization of those lights coming together. Is that my understanding of what you're saying here?
Yeah,
synchronizing their motions.
The green glow, though, is actually one of the biggest clues. It's not standard aviation light. In fact, it matches with what we'd see in ionized gas, especially in plasma discharge or field-based energy systems. This isn't like a reflection or a spotlight. It's an energy emitted. The color holds tight to a specific band. It doesn't drift or flicker like you'd see in LED, interference or reflection off the water. That kind of stability tells me it's being controlled, and in multiple frames, you can even see the white hot center of the green halo, just like what's observed in high voltage plasma experiments. So when people say it's probably just a plane, I always ask, well, what kind of plane glows with ionized gas, hovers without sound, and emits stabilized green-white pulse in a perfect harmonic pattern? Because we don't have those.
Yeah, your voice is still breaking up. I think it might be a bad connection because it's just breaking. It's going soft, we can hardly hear you. Then it comes on real loud again. You may have to reestablish the connection. You might also have to check for that undercover government van parked on your street somewhere that's trying to jam your signal.
Yeah, that's been an
Is it
interesting
better when I
topic.
speak to the computer?
It's still really soft.
Still doing that? What the heck? Okay.
You're
Yeah.
being interrupted by something. But anyways,
Yeah, we haven't had this happen before on any of these.
yeah,
I know,
it
I know,
doesn't
all the times-
surprise me. Doesn't surprise
Yeah,
me.
it doesn't surprise me. What I would recommend is that you leave the room and then come back in and see if it might be something with the network that's your Wi-Fi or something else. Maybe it's just a bad channel.
It's okay, Melissa. Just keep going. We've got time issues here. Melissa, another thing I was going to share with you. I went on with a person who was part of the Pentagon, and I was able to go watch UAPs. And this one night they were doing maneuvers, and I know this is kind of going a little bit off base, but not really, because there's a question to this I want to ask. One of the things that I saw to the right of me when we were out there observing these UAPs was about 200 feet to my right, there was a ship floating right there with this plasma that you're talking about, this light. It was a greenish light. And I kept asking myself, okay, I didn't want to look over there. For some reason, it was a little bit of fear. It was a little bit of the unknown. Is that a ship, or I'm just seeing something out of my own imagination? This was the early stages before I got involved with the phenomena. And I saw this thing floating over here to my right. And I saw that exact emanation of that same light you're talking about. And I kept asking myself, does this light cause that apparatus to float or to maneuver, like, hover? I guess that's the word I need to use, hover. I don't know if you've ever come across those kind of analytics.
I have, but it's in the next report.
Ah, okay.
Yes, it's in the next report. I don't know how much I'm going to give away of that, but that report throws this one in the trash.
Just keeping us on the edge of our
I
seats.
know. Thank you.
I mean,
Thank
not
you.
saying that this one isn't big, but the next one, this one I'm finding, it's blowing my mind. Absolutely blowing my mind.
Okay, for the next chapter. So I
The
asked.
next chapter is
I asked a future
We're
question.
we're gonna have to do a several part series here.
Probably so on that one. Yeah, that case is probably so. Right now, the report that was just put out on IUFOB right now is out. That's I think about 60 pages, but this new one is going to be probably between 200 and 300.
Okay, we would love to have you on our show once that comes out, because I want that question answered. But I find I'm very techie in my mind, very scientifically minded, and I don't let a lot of people know that other side of me. But this fascinates me because I've had experiences around it too, similar to what Minnie's had. I'm sure John's had too. But I'll never forget that experience of seeing the light. The light was very significant.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that it came up in it's one thing for it to come up in one UAP case, but it's another for it to come up into a second one that's completely unrelated. This one, so that one came off of TikTok. It was just one that I went, wow, that's interesting. And then when I got Mindy's, I went, I wonder what would happen if I did the same thing. And it was the same thing, down to the same harmonics. And
I love it.
I mean, now that there's a pattern. I love the bigger picture though. It means that we've moved past stories and speculations. We're finally seeing measured data, structured and repeatable and intelligent. And this isn't now just a light in the sky. It's a signal. It's precise, and it's showing up in multiple places across unrelated events. So, whether it's advanced human tech or something entirely different, we're now watching a behavior of a system. Something
to look at is a communication device. 100%. Looking at the mathematics of it being a communication frequency. Yeah. I'd love to see that happen too.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned before when we previously talked whether this was biological or not.
Right.
And I think that's one of the most important questions, and the most complicated. based on everything that I've recorded, both in Mindy and Daytona case, I cannot say that this is a biological craft. The frequency structure does not support that. The 5.04 hertz signal is precise right down to the decimal. It repeats identically across two separate events, and breaking it down the full harmonic underneath, that's not organic. That's engineered. It matches something that we see, right? Like I said before, in plasma containment systems or advanced simulation, not biological organisms. So, but what is strange is that we're also picking up real-time RF field spikes that seem to correlate with human emotional states, especially in the proximity to certain people or environments. We've documented emotional triggers and music-induced resonance, even measurable electromagnetic changes when intention or focus is involved. So, like, again, while I can't say the craft is biological, I do believe that the system is using might be biointeractive, meaning it may respond to consciousness, to feeling, to field-based communication that we don't fully understand yet. And I'll be honest, I mean, we're still in the early phases of testing this. There might be data that comes in that blows me away more than it already has. So there's still a lot to go. So we can't say anything indefinite, but we have real data.
So the question I want to ask, and I'll open my big mouth again, is, have you been contacted by any alphabet letter agencies who do not want you to get this information out?
I have not, but Mindy and I have both been being stalked by some interesting people throughout the government, so there are eyes on us. Yeah.
One of the things that strikes me is this idea of light communicating. And in the case, real quick, in the case of the Phoenix Lights, there were a lot of people that saw it, but very few people actually got their cameras out to film it. And you see this over and over. In the Phoenix Lights case on Interstate 10 between Phoenix and Tucson, it went right over the top of the Interstate 10. And people were out of their cars, all looking at the sky. And then when it went, after it passed, nobody turned to each other and said, "Did you just see what I said?" Everybody just quietly got back in their cars and continued their journey. And in my experience, when I've been in paranormal situations, UFOs included, what I've seen is an absence of sound. Insect life, animal life, all that disappears. And I got to the point, and call it mild paranoia, but I got to the point where if the dogs were barking in my neighborhood at night, most people it would drive them nuts, and they'd be screaming out the window, "Shut up!" And I'm over there going, "Okay, there's no UFOs around, so I'm, I can sleep." And it became a source of comfort to hear all those noises. So I'm just saying.
Melissa, I would like to bring up, in response to John, that he was speaking of the Phoenix Lights, and that was one of the ones you identified that showed the same resonance as my video and the Daytona Beach video from TikTok. And when we're referencing that, I do want to share that we did get permission from that witness that had posted it to do the analysis on it. She is aware that we're posting it. All the videos are available, that my two videos plus the Daytona Beach video are all available on internationalUFObureau.com, along with Melissa's full report. So I just wanted to throw that in there. And Melissa, if you'd like to build on that, because I know the Nimitz also shared the same.
I want to go, what I'd like to touch on is neurobiology, honestly. I just completely lost my train of thought.
And a train wreck?
Oh my goodness.
It's okay. Your brain is so full of so much stuff, Melissa.
I know.
We understand you're nervous.
There's so much information going out. I even stopped doing my last the continued report. I had to stop doing it so that I could remember this one. But in short, I'm not using the right word because I can't think of it, but conditioned stimuli. We have conditioned stimuli. We've had conditioned stimuli since we can remember. The best example is that when you see red or blue flashing lights, your immediate reaction is what's going on? What's the news? Is everybody okay? That's something that's subliminally programmed into you.
Mm-hmm.
That means that light's energy can pierce the body and condition you in a way that you don't understand. So going back to like Mindy or Daytona's case, or even Phoenix and the Lights, is there a possibility that this light is a conditioned stimuli? There's a possibility, absolutely. That's still up in the air because we don't have that data quite yet. But it's looking good.
And by the same token, could it be operant conditioning, similar to Pavlov's dogs? And I'm familiar with this because I was a firearms instructor for law enforcement. And we have to train police officers to shoot at human silhouette targets because they will not do it normally. It's something that you have to condition them to do over and over and over until they can actually shoot a human target. So by the same point, we use operant conditioning techniques to achieve that. Otherwise, it's your human nature says, no, don't do it.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It could be like that, but honestly, it depends. So if it's us and we are not told about black ops and all of this science, could they be using it for some type of maybe warfare? Possibly. There's so many questions that could be asked on this.
Melissa, one of the things that I would bring up about that is with what we're doing at the Bureau, it is so good, the board of directors that we've assembled, having people like Dr. De La Garza and Dr. Rogers on our team. And they both, as you said, peer reviewed the research you put together. I was blown away. As John had mentioned, I used to be with another organization. I actually created all the training that thousands of UFO investigators have been through. So I know the very basics and the things to look at in a UFO case. So whenever you came back with the information that you had found and the harmonics you had found buried in there, I was quite literally blown away. And that's why we're so excited to get this out to the public so they can start looking it over and dissecting it and see if we forgot something or we might have missed something, or even give us a new angle to look at that we may have overlooked. But having someone like Dr. De La Garza, who was the air domain chief at NORAD, he knows the signatures for even experimental aircraft. Dr. Rogers knows the capabilities of even experimental craft within both of their scopes of knowledge. They cover such a wide swath of what it could be. And of course, they can't share everything because some things they're still beholden to their NDAs and their security clearances. They cannot reveal some things, but they can still sometimes give a nod and go, you're on the right track. So it's not just a bunch of, girls out here having fun and looking stuff up and trying to make, a big to-do of nothing. This is something that, again, has been peer reviewed over and over with the signatures it shows and the capabilities it shows with people that are highly in the know of what our capabilities are here in the US. So that's saying a lot.
Yeah.
Well, Mindy, having said that, you said basically the board that you have chosen, that is exactly what was needed for your organization, because we wanted to not just come across as another investigative corporation, institution. We want to really get down to the nitty gritty, bring in the best minds that we could bring in to analyze these data that comes in with people, and also a gathering information database that you've created. And that was one of the things that people want to come in and share their stories without feeling intimidated. And Melissa is coming on exclusively to this show because she did not want the intimidation of agencies watching her TikTok or whatever she's putting out there, but wants to reveal the truth to the world. And that's what the IFUOBO Bureau is all about. The International Bureau is all about. And we're here to gather information so that people who know that it's out there, and we're doing our work and investigations on what we're putting out there for the world, not just for certain agencies or just certain people. It's for the world.
Yeah, we tried to, and with you being on the board, you're aware of this, but we really tried to balance out who we brought in, especially at the very foundation when we were first starting up, and have a good balance of people that do have those clearances, that do understand some of the insider aviation secrets and some of the military secrets. We need their input, but also it has to be balanced with the experiencers, because the experiencers, and experiencers is such a wide term, but particularly the abductees, not to study them, but to listen to them. And that's why we have a lot of us, most of us on the board are experiencers. And, you know, whenever I say experiencer, for me, I'm a near-death experiencer, and now I have this experience with a very interesting light. And I have markers that indicate that I probably have had abductions in the past, but I don't have conscious memories of it. So I always kind of stumble with that and struggle, like, am I an experiencer or am I not? Very well could be, but those that know definitely and have clear memory of their abduction experiences, they are on the board. They are informing what we're doing. And it goes along with the investigator side of things, where we have the law enforcement, and even myself being a nurse. I know how to collect samples. I know how to, being an ICU nurse, I know how to look at the information and kind of understand what's going on with things. So we've tried to put together that good balance where there are people with technical skills, people with government insight, and then those with abduction insight, and even counselors within our team to be able to speak to experiencers who might be going through a traumatic experience or trying to process that. So we've tried to bring together the best team possible. And bringing on the Rangers, obviously you guys are incredible, and we couldn't ask for anyone better in leading the Indigenous side of things. We also have, like, Marianne Robb leading the law enforcement initiative, and those kind of work together because it goes along with our archives that we have from Hayden from back to 1957, and understanding what was going on in our recent history, putting that with our very ancient history from the Indigenous stories, and then using that to inform the law enforcement response to if there's another thing that happens, like what was said to happen out in Miami at the mall, or what happened in Vegas. They have to be informed on the proper response. I mean, how do you respond to a possible alien craft? Those are things we need to be looking at, and understanding something like this signal, which may be the first attempts at a civilian organization understanding communication patterns and possibly understanding how to open up that channel of communication. We could be starting on something very big here, and we're only 6 months in.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that if we continue to do this work, now that I have built the structure to be able to figure out how to detect the harmonics and the frequencies within it, we can start mapping them individually. And even if we're coming up with other things besides the 5.04 hertz, we should be able to start creating a map and understanding it on a level that we've never understood it before.
You know, at some point when we bring you back on your show, you talk about methodologies and skill sets that you used. We did not go into it. I'm sure we just got the tip of the sword today, and I appreciate what was said here. I mean, there are so many questions in my brain right now that are floating around. But just to give you a little bit of my understanding is to let people know, go watch that movie UFO. It kind of touches on what you're doing. It's 2018. It starred Gillian Anderson, and I think it was David Strathairn. It's an older movie. It was a B movie, but it hit me like a ton of rocks when I remembered that, of what you're doing, because that is a movie. We're talking about reality. And it took your brain to analysis of this experience of two different experiences, unrelated, and maybe contact is coming, because I've heard so many people saying it's time. This could be the time.
It could
And
be.
Yeah,
It could be.
and
I'm definitely not the one,
inter-
never going to be the one to say that, just because I bring the data. I don't bring the conclusion. Everybody else can come up with their own conclusions.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the International UFO Bureau is accepting membership if you go to the website, and so they're looking for new members. They're looking for qualified investigators, and or any people that can fulfill any other niche duties that need to be done. And as you can see, she picked the best of the best of the best, sir, with honors. So,
Thank you, ma'am.
we just have a couple of minutes left. Closing thoughts?
Thank
I'll
you.
jump in with a closing thought, if you don't mind.
Sure.
This is something that me and Melissa had spoken about earlier because of the TikTok she posted. Got so much traction in like 2 days. And one of the things we had discussed is some people are really going to be let down. They're going to be like, oh, it was a signal or something that they picked up.
Mhm.
Big whoop. Where is disclosure? But we really believe, I think most of us within our team believe that disclosure is a process. And so what we're putting out there is a first step. It's been 6 months that we've been at this. So give us some time. There will be bigger releases coming in the future as we continue this research. And we'd love to hear from the public and anything that they'd like to add in or give us their thoughts on it. I mean, even if it's a bad critique, which we don't really care for, but of course we have to listen to because a lot of times they're right. And so it's things that we need to take into consideration. But, I apologize to the ones that are let down, but I think others that have been within the field for a long time will be very happy with what we've revealed today and what we're finding because they understand the importance of what it's hinting at and seeing the big picture. Once that second report is peer reviewed, we'll be getting it out there. And I think that a lot of people are going to be excited about it.
And so with that being said, we're going to segue into that video that Melissa put out. So thank you guys for being on the show.
In 3 days, I will be on a live release to show the public what's never been shown before. Not in a documentary, not in a leak. This isn't speculation. I have confirmed something that's never been proven to the public until now, and the data lined up in a way that changes everything. This is the first time the public will see it.
And with that, you guys, thank you once again for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And one last thought. If people want to see the full report, it is up on IUFOB. It's about 70 pages long, so dive into it.
Thank you, Mindy. Thank you. It's been a great show. We want you
Thank
back
you,
on.
guys.
We want you back on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
coming back.